Hey everybody, and welcome back to Lost Genre Mother-in-Law Stories. We all know what this video is going to be about, mother-in-laws that just drive you nuts. So let's go ahead and get started with that first story. My husband and I have been married for 10 years now, and during our entire marriage, I have endured mother-in-law problems. I have honestly tried so hard to get along with her, and I genuinely want her to like me, so I'm constantly going out of my way when she visits to make her stay a wonderful one. But the truth is, nothing is good enough, and she repeatedly tries to undermine me or, as strange as it sounds, compete with me. My mother-in-law has, on at least 3 occasions during our marriage, given my husband a spicy magazine in my presence. Naturally, it makes me livid, but more frustrating is that my husband, who doesn't want to confront his mother, merely says, "No thanks, Mom." When dear husband is not around, she makes weird comments about how lucky I am to have such a handsome, Greek god-looking husband, etc. There have been times that, when my mother-in-law finds out that dear husband is on his way home, she immediately starts primping and does her hair and makeup to greet him at the door. She is constantly fighting for his attention, which he fails to give her because he feels totally smothered by her. She talks incessantly, stream of consciousness, and never listens to others. It is absolutely exhausting to sit near her and try to follow what she is saying. During her last visit this past month, we took her out to dinner, and out of nowhere she said to me that I should be understanding if dear husband were ever out with the guys and they happened to drag him to a topless bar or something. The nerve! I cannot understand why she would make such comments. It makes me feel inadequate despite being in perfect health and shape. Well, I was about to lunge at her across the table and then looked at my husband with a look that said, "If you don't deal with it, I'll use my steak knife." Dear husband did tell his mom that he disagreed, but I don't feel he's forthright enough in dealing with his mom's strange behavior around relationships and passionate time. Besides, she won't let him get a word in edgewise if he does speak up. If there is any hint of confrontation, she changes the subject. Anything to ensure that her precious son is in complete agreement with her. It's almost like there's an Oedipus complex in reverse, where the mom so desires her only son's attention and affection. I feel as though she believes that she is competing with me for dear husband's affection. What hurts most is that I try to get dear husband to appreciate his mom. I remind him to compliment her, and I even encourage dear husband to spend time with his mother, but he can't stand to be around her. After 10 minutes, we are both exhausted from listening at her stream of consciousness tales that make no sense. I believe there is some mental illness going on, but despite that, I am so angry at my husband for not supporting me during her jabs. I used to question myself, what was I doing to deserve this? She constantly tells me how lucky I am to have dear husband since he is perfect. At least my mother-in-law and I do agree on that. My husband is a wonderful, handsome, intelligent, sensitive man who is a great provider and father. But I'm no shrinking violet myself. I'm sick of the comments from mother-in-law about how hard he works now that I quit work to stay home with our 2 young children, as if I sit around and eat bonbons all day. I gave up my fast-track career as a director at a Fortune 500 company. I may not be using my MBA these days, but I do work hard taking care of a baby and a preschooler. Despite my efforts, I just can't understand why it is that what I do never measures up for this woman. Well, OP, I think you said it within your statement. First of all, this mother-in-law definitely has some psychological issues regarding the affection for her son. She's clearly competing with you from what you're saying. And none of your efforts will ever measure up for her because you are the competition. So she has to constantly undermine you in order to feel better about herself, I guess. I would say this is something you need to talk to about your husband and ask if he sees the same. And if he does, well, then there's something that has to be done about your mother-in-law. What do you guys think? What do you think is going on with the mother-in-law here? Do you think this is some sort of psych issue? Let me know in the comment section. Anyways, there is a very short update, so let's get to that. I've taken the reins into my own hands because my husband has tried to avoid the issue too long. I will no longer accompany him when he visits her. Thank goodness she lives in the Midwest and we live in California. And if her erratic behavior continues, I will not allow my 2 children to be in her presence. I have never left them alone with her anyway, and she has absolutely no interest in them. She is only concerned about trying to look younger, no doubt to compete with me for her son's attention. All of her plastic surgery on her face, eyes, nose, bust, and neck is wasted money as far as I'm concerned, because she needs therapy. I'm done with her. Here's to no contact. So, OP solution, no contact with the crazy lady. I do find it incredibly creepy that she has all these plastic surgeries to look younger for her son. I mean, the way OP's saying it. That's weird. Therapy is definitely needed. Alright, now let's move on to the next story. My mother-in-law is always the martyr. If she's fresh out of recent slice, she will tell you all day long about all the terrible things that were done to her, with her marriage failing, and her husband running off to another woman, and the other woman stealing her husband away, all of which is total nonsense. She made a giant stink a few days before our wedding because my father-in-law would be escorting his wife and not her. Oh well, gee whiz, heaven forbid the man choose his wife over his ex-wife. She got upset with my husband over that first. Then, the next thing was that because my husband basically pointed out our concern over whether she'd be able to behave and control herself at our rehearsal dinner, she played the wounded mother whose son was being disrespectful to her. She told her hot-headed butthole brother her side of that story, so he called my husband and yelled at him like a 2-year-old for how he treated his mother, telling him that our wedding day was the most important day of her life and that he better go over to her house and tell her that she's the most important woman in his life. Yeah, right. Of course, thankfully for me, my dear husband has a mind of his own and can't be influenced like that. This was 4 days before our wedding. Well, my dear husband did not go over, he didn't even call her, that was good. I hope that we could get across the point that this was our wedding and that the pathetic martyr crap wasn't gonna work. At the rehearsal, she started in on him right away about how much he hurt her. Please, while I play with my tiny violin, I'll tell you that neither I nor my dear husband feel sorry for her in this situation. She brought it on herself. She can't get over a divorce that happened almost 20 years ago. She continues to be bitter and resentful towards my father-in-law and his wife, who lives hundreds of miles away and also have been married for 15, 16 years now. The kids they had together are all in their 20s now, and she never has to have anything to do with father-in-law or his wife again. Yet she continues to torture herself and us with her hatred. That marriage, by the way, was her second one. She hasn't been married since. She doesn't even date anymore. She was dating one guy that her family liked a lot. The guy did all sorts of things for her and the kids when they were younger. He even replaced her roof when she couldn't afford it. Yet, she stopped seeing him. The reason? In her words, he wanted to be around her all the time and he was getting in the way of her time with her kids. Well, big surprise. In her eyes, everything is in the way of her time with her kids. I swear she would marry her kids if it was legal. They are all adults now, but she treats them like children because she can't deal with the fact that they are grown up. As the wife, this really makes me angry. My husband is not a child and he and I can take care of ourselves without any involvement from her. She once bought the kids their favorite cereal from when they were little kids and sent my dear husband's home with them. It was one of the junk cereals where the main ingredient is sugar. I was furious because I had already told her that we don't buy foods like that because my husband shouldn't have foods with that much sugar due to a certain health problem he has. She is well aware of his problem, and she is aware because I told her a number of times that he shouldn't have foods like that. But I suppose since he's one of the kids, that gives her the right to do whatever she wants. We've been thinking of someday moving to where father-in-law lives, and I think that if we actually go, She is going to be the thing to finally get us packing. I think dear husband's brother could also end up living in that area too one day. My biggest fear is that once we go, she'll want to follow us because she can't deal with being away from her kids. And there you have another mother-in-law that has a problem with her kids growing up and getting their lives of their own. Could this be some sort of empty nest situation or something like that? Not the whole deal with her ex-husband, which is clearly an issue on its own, but the fact that she just can't let her kids grow up. Like with that whole cereal buying situation that OP explained. I think it has to be some sort of abandonment issue. You know, her husband's leaving her and now her children are leaving her, and that's gotta take some toll. I'm not excusing her behavior, of course not, but there has to be some underlying issue that can explain it. Alright, now let's move on to the third and final story. My mother-in-law and brother-in-law are two of a kind. My dear husband's parents divorced when both he and brother-in-law were young. Dear husband took on the role of head of the household when it came to manly duties. For example, house maintenance, fatherly role, etc. That was 20 years ago. Father-in-law is now, and has always been, in the picture, but never seems to receive any credit. In fact, mother-in-law has turned brother-in-law completely against father-in-law by saying that he walked away, etc. Not true. Dear husband realizes this and has maintained a healthy, loving relationship with father-in-law. When dear husband and I were planning our wedding/marriage, mother-in-law and brother-in-law held a private family meeting with dear husband and explained that he should never forget them just because he was moving away. A whole 30 minutes. I agreed that dear husband should always love his family and be there for family events, but part of marriage was two becoming one, and I am his new family, as he is mine. Dear husband agreed and takes our marriage vows seriously. Mother-in-law and brother-in-law don't see it that way. Both continue to give him grief because he doesn't come over weekly, and he no longer cuts grass, does home maintenance, or helps out with other daily household things. In fact, harsh words have now been exchanged between them because they feel he has dropped them for me and he sticks by me. Brother-in-law is perfectly capable of doing such things. He's just very lazy and likes to party and act like a teenager. He's in his mid-20s. When we announced our much-planned pregnancy, the only comments we received from mother-in-law and brother-in-law were that we were too young. We're in our early 30s. Mother-in-law says that she cannot be excited because I will never share the baby with her, and that she cannot see having to share the baby with her ex-husband and his wife. Brother-in-law says that the baby only means that I have a further stake in owning his brother. He has expressed his disappointment in my pregnancy several times. This pregnancy has been hard with threats of miscarriage and special attention. Not once has mother-in-law or brother-in-law called to check on me or even asked about me. We saw brother-in-law this weekend at a huge event with over 30,000 people. He had the nerve to say to me, "Why don't you go in and we'll join you later?" I was speechless. He really wanted me to go, alone and pregnant, into a huge event at night so that he could spend time with his brother. My dear husband immediately spoke up and said, "I don't think so." I'm just thankful that my dear husband stands by me. He is a good man. I am bringing a precious child in this world soon, and I want to protect it and me from being treated so harshly. I realize that the problem is really a family codependency problem, but the unhealthiness affects our family too. Yes, I think OP is right, it is a codependency problem, but it's a very stupid one. When her in-laws got divorced, the mother-in-law was definitely bittered by it. Or she wouldn't have filled her younger son's head with ideas that his dad just, abandoned them or something. I think OP's husband realizes this and is really taking his vow serious to get away from his codependent family. If they're in their early 30s, this means that OP's husband took the father role when he was around 12 or 13 years old. A kid. He shouldn't be having that sort of responsibility. That's where the mother-in-law failed as a mom. She allowed her youngest child, to take on a role that he was not fit to take. She took away his childhood and turned him into some sort of house maintenance guy. And the brother-in-law sounds completely spoiled and useless if he can't even mow the lawn. But I'm not a pro, that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Alright, well once again we've reached the end of the video. If you liked it, go ahead and click like. If you still haven't subscribed, come on, just click subscribe. And having said all that, I'll see you guys on the next video.